about Kimberly-Clark, Clorox, some of the read-through that we got. Everyone has been hoarding last year that they're coming up on really tough comps on a year-over-year basis.
Yeah, no doubt about it. A lot of green that you're showing everybody in our TV audience and just for our radio audience. We saw that play across the board. Check out some of the winners. SVB Financial, they're the holding company for Silicon Valley Bank. The company reported EPS and sales above estimates. This has been a blowout this year. It's up about 50%. Adding on to that today, AMD. Intel loses, AMD gains. And we saw that certainly being one of the bigger winners today. Drop off that we saw in terms of Intel's, some of their businesses, particularly their data center revenue businesses, that is perceived as maybe a gain for AMD, and that's why you saw that stock moving up today. Cypress shares, not a company that we talk about a lot. It's a micro cap. It's a very small company here, up 171% today, but gaining today after getting an award from the U.S. Department of Defense, prime contractor to make and test electronic assemblies for a government spacecraft program. Gotta end with beer. Boston Beer, also a gainer today. Deutsche Bank saying it was a knockout quarter. Come on, guys, it's the weekend.
It is. You know, what's beer without some chips? Of course, I'm talking about Intel. You mentioned Intel, Carol. Look, we covered it yesterday when the market closed in our Beyond the Bell segment. Biggest drop in 3 months after reporting a drop in data center revenue. Steep decline in gross profit margin. We heard Taylor talk about those tough comps. We're seeing that with Kimberly-Clark as well, declining around 6% today. Toilet paper sales plunging, shares sliding on reports of steep declines. It signals the end of the boom that was brought on by the pandemic. Of course, everyone a year ago at this time buying a ton of toilet paper and hoarding it. American Express lower today by around 2%. The company reported revenue for the first quarter that missed the average analyst estimates. And Honeywell lower by around 2% today. The shares moved lower after the outlook for the full year disappointed investors. Aerospace and energy businesses continue to struggle with fallout from the pandemic, Carol.
And you know also what's lower, Tim? Dollar. US dollar weakness is on the day. Let us talk to our global radio, TV, YouTube audiences and go cross-asset for them, because on the currency front, I'm seeing a euro up 0.7%, the Danish krona up 0.7%, Norwegian krona getting a bid because of oil. This is all as the Bloomberg dollar index ends the day down by 0.4%. Why? We don't need a haven today because the economic data came out so strong, the housing data, the PMIs. So that feeds into also where oil had been going. Oil was up on the day. We see some of the metals perform well, zinc up 1.8%. Weak, soft commodities, the story of the week for me, this food inflation story really being seen with weather an issue. We talk of Earth Day, of climate change. Wheat currently up 1.5% is where we trade. And lastly, actually, a bit of a bid for bonds when it looked at Europe. We saw a sell-off in European shares today, unlike the US.
45.
So a bit of a movement perhaps to a haven when it came to the European trade, Taylor.
You mentioned food inflation. Unfortunately, I don't see inflationary expectations showing up in my 30-year bonds on a weekly basis. You're still down about 4 or 5 basis points on the long end. Well, starting Monday. Starting from last Friday, it looks only like 3 basis points. I'm trying to just not say hunch on this program every time. But on a weekly basis, Carol, what we see is you're down 3 straight weeks on the 10-year. You were down 5 straight weeks on the 30-year. Blink and you miss it. Inflationary expectations, well, maybe they haven't shown up just yet, at least in the long end of the bonds.
Well, listen, next week's going to be all about some blockbuster earnings. Most U.S. companies right now are surpassing earnings estimates. We'll see if that's the case when it's Facebook, Apple, Microsoft, Tesla, General Electric, Boeing, Starbucks, and McDonald's, guys.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to get a good snapshot, Romaine, of what's going on kind of in the overall economy.
Yeah, busiest week here for the S&P 500, about 178 companies. But interesting thing here, I mean, obviously, while the EPS growth numbers are going to be phenomenal, but that's obviously been aided by how poorly they performed, of course, a year ago. But those revenue numbers aren't necessarily as strong. You're talking about 9% growth is kind of the aggregate estimate right now for the software companies, a little bit better for the hardware companies. So the bar here is set at a level that if they don't meet it, you could see a negative reaction.
Yeah, Romaine, one company that I'm going to be watching closely is Starbucks. Absolutely interested in how the company is thinking about the reopening. Also the effect that stimulus checks have had. And we've seen pockets of the United States reopen as more and more people have been vaccinated. Also, what's the company saying about the recovery in China? As we know, China is just months ahead of the U.S. when it comes to reopening. So looking for those Asian numbers as well.
And as we spoke to the CEO of Chipotle yesterday, asking about that food inflation when it comes to McDonald's, when it comes to Arabica beans, Romaine, as you keep saying, the coffee, what is Starbucks doing in terms of passing that one on? But it does clearly seem to be this theme within some of the restaurant chains, if not, of course, Big
Yeah,
Tech.
next week's going to be interesting because a lot of the companies that are reporting are going to give you a real good snapshot, not just of the U.S. economy, but really the global economy as well. And don't forget, guys, next week we also get that first read on first quarter GDP, which is supposed to be phenomenal, 6.5% annualized growth rate. That's up from that 4.3% that we had in the fourth quarter. The question is, how persistent is that?
Ooh, not transitory, Romaine, right? Persistent. I want to talk about something that's been very persistent, Carol, on the show, which has all been the housing numbers. Can we just take a look at those home sales that we got from March at an annualized rate of more than 1 million, well above expectations, are up 21% month over month. I love it when we show up and just pull up the charts like that. You are now the highest since, wait for it, 2006. I don't know if that's a good sign or not, but sales in the South, the highest since 2005. We all migrate south. Get out of the Northeast.
Well, listen, and that's if you can find a previously on home and you can actually buy it, because we know it's been really tough to do it. And we know lumber prices, they have really been off the charts. Lumber mills aren't producing it, and as a result, those costs are going up, but there's not the supply out there. And that, I do wonder whether or not that starts to slow down some of those housing numbers at some point.
Yeah, I bought my first house at the peak back there in 2006.
Ouch, nice timing.
Yeah, maybe now is the time to buy again. Are we going to talk about crypto at all? I mean, crypto just had like an amazing week, and by amazing, I mean awful.
Bad off.
Yeah, it's been down on the week. But guys, look, yes, it's sold off, but 50,000, can you remember the last time it was at 50,000?
It's still
End
a
of
great
March.
investment.
End
If
of
you've been
March.
in it right in the past year or the last couple of years, you've
I like
made a
her
lot of
accent.
money.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, basically you're back to
And
where
smile.
you were, what, just over 30 days ago, Tim.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's been an amazing year for Bitcoin. It's been an amazing calendar year. But if we think back to where it was a year ago, if only to have a time machine, guys.
Oh my God, I wish we had done it. All right, that's going to do it for our cross-platform coverage on Bloomberg Radio, Bloomberg TV, and on YouTube. We'll see you again Monday, same time, same place.
Meanwhile, more markets coverage coming right up. We are sticking with all those big earnings we were just talking about. We're going to dig a little bit deeper into what to watch out for Tesla that comes out on Monday. This is Bloomberg.
Trading revenues coming in better than expected. Everything cash, $1.4 trillion of cash. One of the most notable aspects of this report that was stellar.
Real estate ultimately responds to the underlying economy, and it hasn't been immune to downward valuation pressure. But our mandate is to think ahead. Historically, real estate delivers a really strong, stable income stream with the potential for appreciation in asset value. It's also generally uncorrelated with the public markets. At Principal, we see real estate as a cornerstone for an investor's portfolio.
The world's first fully autonomous vehicle is almost at the finish line.
What a ride! I invested in Invesco QQQ, a fund that invests in the innovators of the NASDAQ 100, like you.
Become an agent of innovation with Invesco QQQ.
How do you make supply chains healthier? How do you make them more agile and resilient? You start by getting the pulse of what's happening now and what's about to happen with GEP software. Using AI, predictive analytics, Internet of Things, and other transformative technologies, GEP provides complete visibility and better control over supply chains. Anytime, anywhere. GEP. Supply chain solutions for the world's best companies.
EMX, the royalty generator, building shareholder value through royalty creation and acquisition. Get global exposure from rising gold, silver, copper, and battery metals prices with significantly less risk. EMX Royalty.
Just shy of a record high. The S&P 500, if you'd added just 6 more points, we would have seen the S&P 500 at a record where we were this time last week. But of course, we've seen such a whipsaw of a week on the S&P, and today we did drive more than a percentage point higher, offsetting, of course, the lags of yesterday as we digested the potential proposal of capital gains taxes. Today it's big tech that led us higher. So too did economic data. New housing sales, I mean, phenomenal. Highest since we've seen back to 2006. It drives lumber even higher. This has been really one of the asset classes to watch when it comes to commodities.